to talk about Jeff Sessions and his new Get Tough on Crime. Good morning, Brad Garrett.
Good morning, McGraw.
I thought a lot of conservatives had sort of turned their back on Get Tough laws because they were realizing they just weren't working.
Well, particularly, McGraw, when you talk about long sentences, there's a diminishing return with criminals once they get a certain age that statistically they don't certainly commit serious crime if and when they're released. So the argument is we have a big chunk of folks in prison, and maybe rightly should be in prison, but not as long as they were sentenced.
He wants to do what in terms of all of this? Get Tough is a nice slogan, but what does that mean exactly?
Well, there's a thing I think it was called Project Exile, that surprisingly FBI Director Comey started when he was a federal prosecutor detailed to Richmond, Virginia, because at one point it had the highest homicide rate statistically in the country, where the feds aggressively prosecute convicted felons in possession of firearms and give them a mandatory 5-year minimum sentence. So he wants more of his U.S. attorneys, of which some already are doing that, to go after convicted felons. He also thinks that we should go back to promoting abstinence when it comes to drugs, which has never worked. But he thought Nancy Reagan had a cool idea back in the 80s, and so he's going to push that.
Yeah, that's interesting because those of us on the front lines of the heroin epidemic, whether it's locking up non-violent drug offenders, whether marijuana or drugs or whatever else, it's overcrowding the prisons, creating all sorts of havoc socially with the people who are left on the outside and not really solving the problem, which, again, a lot of conservatives and Republicans can't agree on anything, but can agree on, locking up drug offenders and that type of deal isn't necessarily the best way to go about solving this drug epidemic.
There's no question about that, McGraw. Now, the Attorney General talks about being aggressive with drug dealers. Now, of course, you and I know that can be defined many different ways, but there maybe is some merit in that, but we already are pretty aggressive in doing that. But you're exactly right. Does it translate into, the guy down the street that you walk by every day who's a heroin addict and he gets locked up and gets a fair amount of time? That is not going to work. You definitely have to pull that together on the outside. And my concern is they're going to cut money of programs that treat people, and that's going to be an issue.
What are your thoughts, Brad Garrett, as you watch the Justice Department hand down these indictments on these Russian hackers?
Well, some would say, McGraw, overdue. The amount of hacking by both the Russians and the Chinese is way beyond even what we talk about publicly. I mean, it is such a huge problem. If you look at that Yahoo hack, I mean, really going after information on government employees, on individuals, to steal credit card numbers, to go after banks. I mean, it goes on and on. You kind of look at it this way. It's kind of like the tentacles that come out are just getting deeper and deeper into our security/cyber/computer systems. And it's so troubling. And, whoever you might talk to, McGraw, by and large, most people who study this stuff still think that's clearly the biggest crime and security threat problem we have is in the cyber arena.
A lot of people think we are under attack. We are at war with Russia. And in this instance, they charge the Russian hackers, but the Russian hackers, it seems like, have been hired by the Russian government. So it looks like the Russian government's plan is to use these hackers to sort of invade America.
That's what they've done, McGraw, for years. The Chinese do the same thing. It's almost like hacking for hire. And some of these guys are just really good. And so it gives them, I suppose, plausible deniability. Well, we didn't do it, but, Mr. X or Miss X did it in Romania or some other country, of course. So, yes, there's a lot of that going on. I suspect if we saw the classified files, I'm going to guess that some of these hacks into the DNC and others were probably done by contractors or people that are once or twice removed from Russian intelligence.
Strange world we live in. Brad Garrett, ABC News crime and terrorism analyst. Thanks for checking in, Brad. Have a good day.
Take care, McGraw.
626.